Hey everybody, it's Meredith Miller with Inner Integration. Today, the topic I have for you is about the scapegoat and the golden child. How and why narcissists assign these roles and not just in the family. So one really important thing to keep in mind, like when you're looking back into childhood and you're questioning, did this happen to me in childhood too? Or is this something new that happened to me as an adult? And you're looking at one of your parents and how they treated you. Understand that there aren't necessarily hard and fast rules. So, some experts in the field will say that a narcissistic parent will pick one scapegoat and one golden child, and that will be that. And there might be some clear lines like that in some family dynamics. Now, again, this could apply in beyond the family. This could be happening in the workplace. This could be happening in your group of friends. This could be happening in your neighborhood. There could be some clear lines in some dynamics in some families or tribes, right? However, in other families and other tribes and other social groups, it can be very fluid. There could be back and forth. One day this person is the scapegoat and this person is the golden child or the golden person, let's say. And then another day it's flipped the other way around. And typically that flip-flop depends on who is pleasing and displeasing the narcissist more in that moment. So, for example, if you speak up about the abuse or something and, maybe you were once mostly the golden child, be ready to see the tables turn quickly on you. You become the scapegoat because the narcissistic parent is now idealizing the other child because you've then taken a stand against the abuse. This could be something that happened as an adult, but maybe this happened in childhood as well. Just maybe you didn't even know the word abuse or realize you're being abused, but you called something out about your parents' behavior. But again, remember, this can apply. I'm going to talk about the family, but keep in mind this can apply to all sorts of groups of people because narcissists tend to do this with different people. So in the family, the scapegoat and the golden child become these roles assigned by the narcissist in order to play the game of extract narcissistic supply through triangulation. Triangulation is like driving a wedge between people. So this can be done by a narcissistic parent or narcissistic anything. It could be your lover, your spouse, your friend, your boss, your coworker, your neighbor, your grandparent, the grandparent even of, say, your kids, right? So basically the game involves two or more people who get pitted against each other, and usually they don't even realize what's happening. They're just aware of the conflict between each other, and there's just always this conflict, and maybe they can't figure out what's going on or where the conflict is coming from, or maybe it's very clearly this parent or this other person. But essentially, the narcissist does this because they want you to turn on each other and have the loyalty of you both. So the narcissist wants the loyalty of everybody, and the narcissist wants everybody fighting amongst themselves. So the narcissist will fabricate lies, gossip, they'll reveal private information about you. They will manufacture enemies. They'll get you to tell on each other. They'll get you to say something bad about each other by probing one person and kind of setting it up in this way to get you to agree with them. And they'll go to the other person and say, oh, guess what so-and-so said about you. Essentially, what they'll also do is get the golden child or the golden person to gang up against the scapegoat. So I read this like maybe a couple years ago, and I can't find this term again. If one of you knows it, please write it in the comments. It was something like sympathetic abuse, and I just tried to look that up and I couldn't find it. But what it meant to me, and I called my brother immediately as soon as I read it, and I was like, so I read this thing that, if you grew up with a narcissistic parent and you're the golden child, typically what happens is your parent gets you to sympathize with the abuse against the scapegoat sibling, the scapegoat child. So I asked my brother, I'm like, did this happen? Did this ever happen? Was I ganging up on you against you with mom? And he's like, not that I can really remember. Oh wait, but there was this one incident where for whatever reason he was really late. He and his buddy were really late getting picked up from wrestling. I don't know why, whatever. This was before cell phones and all that, And for some reason I was with my mom. I don't remember this at all, but chances are she got me to go with her in some kind of subtle, covert way. And then, I was 17, 18 years old. I definitely didn't have to go with her. I could have stayed at home, but, that misery loves company thing. So maybe that's how I got involved in the car. And then probably she was poking at me the whole time to get me to be really upset that I was wasting so much time in the car when I had homework and wanted to call my boyfriend or something like that in the evening. So by the time my brother gets to the car, she's like raging. And my brother's like, yeah, and there were times where you were like, yeah, and like you were upset too. And yeah, now I can totally see that. Like I didn't even realize that I was being used as a pawn to gang up against him because it was just set up that way. The very subtle dynamics of things that could be done in a much more overt fashion as well. Another way is when the narcissistic parent tries to get you guys to hate each other, to dislike each other for whatever reason. Growing up, there was this pasta left on some plate in the hallway, and my brother ate the pasta. It was like a little bit of pasta left. Maybe my mom ate in bed or something, and she left this thing in the hallway, and she was going to take it downstairs later, and the pasta disappeared. So obviously it was my brother who ate it. And she was questioning us both, like, who did it? And my brother wouldn't admit it, and I didn't do it. So I said I didn't do it. And she just kept pushing and pushing. And then she was like, fine, we're not going to eat pasta for, I don't know, weeks or a month or something until one of you fesses up. And then, she got me to like be mad at my brother because he wasn't telling the truth. And then I was getting punished for what he had done and stuff. And like, they'll do this kinds of stuff to drive a wedge between you and your sibling. So like in my family, I was more the conformer, so I was more the golden child. But that wasn't always that way. I had extreme pressure to perform, and when I didn't measure up to that, there was cruelty, there was criticism, there was shaming, and those same tactics were sometimes even used to motivate me to do something that she wanted me to do. Like one of my friends from high school and we got back in touch again recently, and I had mentioned this situation with my mom to her, and she's like, yeah, I always felt like she wanted you to be more popular, or she wanted you to be on one of the courts for like one of the dances or whatever. She at least wanted you to campaign to do that. And like, she seemed disappointed that you weren't part of like the popular group of people. I'm like, amazing that you noticed that. And that's what can happen to the one who's predominantly the golden child. So essentially, I lost more of myself because I was trying to be what she wanted me to be. My brother was more the rebel. He was more of the scapegoat, and he received constant criticism of everything. And what happened, though, is he developed a much stronger sense of self and his reality. Like there were times where he would just call my mom out, and say, Mom, you're the only person in the world who doesn't believe in me. Like I didn't have that kind of self-esteem. I didn't have that kind of clarity about who I am and what was my reality. And so usually the scapegoat figures things out first because it looks a lot uglier to them. It looks a lot uglier to them. They rarely get those doses of love bombing and idealization that the golden child will get as long as they're conforming. And also sometimes the true golden child, like the one who just can't do anything wrong, that narcissistic parent treats them in that way, that true golden child might never be able to see it, the truth, who the narcissist is. They often idealize that narcissistic parent. That could turn into narcissism, not necessarily. I've seen it with another cousin in my family. There were very clear roles in their family of who the scapegoat was and who the golden child was. He's definitely not a narcissist. He's empathic and loving and a wonderful father. I just don't think he can see it because the mother just always idealized him. He didn't get the kind of treatment that his sister got. So if you're living in a family environment where you and your sibling or siblings are under constant scrutiny, like living with the fucking Nazi SS, where your narcissistic parent's favorite game is to abuse your privacy and just dig and dig and dig and poke until they can find something juicy, something bad, something forbidden. And even when there isn't anything to find, they will accuse you of something anyway. And then you get caught in defending yourself from something that you didn't even do. And by the time that conversation ends, you end up feeling guilty for a crime you didn't commit because the argument was so damn compelling. So it gets to this point where you almost hope that the other one, the other sibling, the other person in the situation disappoints the narcissist, the parent, whomever, first, so you don't get as much rage directed at you. And then the result for both of these people, both of the golden child and the scapegoat, is you end up having no sense of self-worth or self-esteem because it's been psychologically beaten out of you in some way. So the scapegoat might hear things like, how dare you have the right to feel good about yourself when you're just so flawed, but they're going to fill that in with something specific. When you're just so blah, 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 but implying that you're flawed, that you're not enough in some way. The golden child maybe will hear something like, how dare you feel good about yourself when you could have done so much better, like you got an A, you could have gotten an A plus, that kind of thing. It's never enough. It's never enough. And, this whole dynamic in a family and again, in the workplace, in a neighborhood, in a group of friends, it can get to the point where the kids or the adults in the situation don't realize what's going on. So one of them is just relieved to not be receiving the abuse at the moment. So they don't speak up for or defend the other, even when they see what's happening. And that's the whole game. The narcissist is trying to make both of the people or all the people in question please the narcissist in order to avoid the rage, the cruelty, the control, and in order to get those breadcrumbs, like so in a family, it's the breadcrumbs of motherly love or the breadcrumbs of fatherly love. If it's at work, it might be something more like approval and status, and that same thing might apply to social circles. So I think the result is like it's not better or worse to be the golden child or the scapegoat. Like it's a different flavor, but it ends up with both of them developing anxiety about when the next rage attack is coming and wanting to avoid that at all costs. Both of them developing deep self-doubt due to all the words of criticism, demeaning, cruelty, and messages that you're not enough. And I read in some site, and I wish I could remember where, it might have been Psychology Today, they were talking about psychological whiplash, right? So whiplash is when you're in a car, especially when you get hit from behind and you get jerked so suddenly that you get like an injury in the back of your neck. And that's literally what it is. It's like every day. You don't know, especially when the roles are so fluid like that, like you don't know from moment to moment when you're going to get the wrath, when you're going to get the rage, and when you're not. And like maybe you're going along in the road and everything's fine today or this moment or this hour, and then all of a sudden, whoosh, out of nowhere, you get blindsided by this rage or accusation or something that's going on, and it's this constant psychological whiplash. Both of these people, the scapegoat and the golden child, are going through the same thing. So keep in mind, too, that the narcissist, the parent, the whomever, doesn't just play this game with you and your siblings. They'll pit any two people apart like this. They might even take external people, like your friends or your family or just random people that they're talking about, and pit them against you. So, for example, maybe your narcissist mother is idealizing your cousin or someone else's kid who did something better than you. And the overt narcissist is going to straight up say that to your face, so-and-so is so much better than you. Why can't you be like so-and-so? It's very overt in your face. The covert narcissistic parent is going to be a lot more subtle. It's going to be almost undetectable insinuations where they're just telling you the story, but it's loaded with all these there's something there. You can feel that they're like little daggers and double entendres and insinuations that you're not good enough, and it ends up eating at you later and really confusing you because of that plausible deniability and their meticulous use of words. Regardless, it ends up making you feel like a failure. It makes you feel like you're not good enough, you're inadequate in some way, or like you need to keep measuring up to earn their approval just like so-and-so earned their approval. Or they could take another route where maybe they're talking about someone else who made a mistake or who did something that they didn't approve of. And they're going on and on about, how they feel about this person or what they think about this person or the actions that they're taking about this person or shutting this person out of their life or firing this person from a job or something like this. And what they're doing is instilling fear in you. If you do that same thing, you're going to meet the same fate. So they can play with a lot of different dynamics here. The result is essentially the same. And the goal, I believe, is divide and conquer. You get the narcissistic mother or father. They want to divide and conquer the children so that they can control and manage everything. Everyone is loyal to the narcissistic parent because they don't want to meet with their wrath and their wrath and their punishment. And then they're going to fight amongst each other. I mean, this is the political system in America. You've got two political systems. And then essentially what happens, just same as with the narcissistic mother, it's the same as what happens in social groups, in cultures, in countries, and politics, is The narcissist spins a polarized narrative, which is gaslighting. They tell you the way things are in some kind of way, and they're lying to you. They're making you believe in some kind of reality that isn't real. They're denying your perception of reality. They're going to create a problem. They're going to manufacture that problem and reaction by stoking your emotions like fear, jealousy, anger, especially fear. And then they provide the messed up solution to the whole thing. So that's exactly how it goes. It's spinning a narrative, problem and reaction, solution. Same thing happens from the familial level to the group at work, to the group of friends, to the neighborhood, to the mass society. So what happens then is they keep you fighting between each other. So you can't unite, you can't uprise, you can't all say, oh, you're the one with the problem here, not us. That division among people keeps the ruler in control. This is the goal of triangulation, is get them to fight amongst themselves and get narcissistic supply in the process. This can even be done when the narcissist isn't there. The lengths they will go to in order to maintain that control, even when they're not present, so the abuse just keeps passing on and on and on, is astounding. My mother did this one time when I was going to go to my cousin's house. So she and my cousin's mom, both narcissists, they talk on the phone a lot, they do lots of gossiping. Her daughter's an amazing human being, and I absolutely love her son. And so I was going to go over there. This was almost 3 years ago. I had like $0 to my name. It was a horrible time in my life, but I wanted to go hang out with my cousins because they're awesome people. And my mom's like, why don't you take a bottle of wine over there tonight? I was like, it's not really necessary, just take a bottle of wine. She was really insistent. So as I was going to go, she had 2 bottles of wine for me to choose from. One was red and one was white. And she knows that I never drink white wine, ever. Like, I just don't like it. I will in a very rare situation if it's really hot. But she knew I was going to pick the red wine. And I didn't even read the labels because it didn't matter to me. I just grabbed the red bottle. And I also know that my cousin, they're Italian, like they're into red wine too. So I get to my cousin's house and I hand her the bottle of wine, and I was so ashamed. And my mother knew this was going to happen, and I walked right into this trap. My mother knew I wasn't just going to be like, I have no money, my mom sent this bottle of wine, and there were other people there. Like, it wasn't just us. So it was awkward and embarrassing. And my cousin looks at the bottle and she's like, menage a trois. And I was like, oh God. Like, there was no taking it back. Like, I realized exactly, I saw the whole thing line up. My mom did this as a form of triangulation because she knows that my cousin is kind of insecure about that kind of thing. And, here I'm there and she's got a husband, and like, what's this idea of menage a trois? Like, that was the furthest thing from my reality. But I fell right into that trap, and I was so ashamed that I didn't have the balls to speak, to just straight up tell her the truth as I would now if that was happening. Like, I totally bombed that moment, and my mother got narcissistic supply without even having to be there. Like, she won. She created that awkward situation, those uncomfortable feelings between my cousin and I, so that we couldn't unite, and she wasn't even there. I fell right into that trap. So beware that you could get set up like that. Like, you could get set up to be in that kind of position where you even create the awkward situation, and that's not at all what you wanted, and that wasn't what you intended. Or you could end up being the sympathizer and not even realize that you're being used to sympathize with their abuse against someone else. So, the bottom line is, having a narcissistic parent is the gift that just keeps giving. And it just goes on and on. There's just constantly these sorts of situations that will happen. But the amazing thing is that if you have siblings who went through this with you, and if you are an only child, I am so sorry. I can only imagine how lonely that must have been, and how much you really probably doubted your reality, and just how devastatingly lonely that must have felt. But for those of us that have siblings who went through this with us, it's like you've been on the front lines of a war together, a war that no one else understands or maybe even knows happened. And that is either an opportunity for a special kind of bond to form between you two, or it's a recipe for a disaster. So, do the best that you can to aim for that special bond that you guys can relate to because you survived that together. But if you realize that you have toxic sibling or toxic siblings, then you may need very different boundaries to protect yourself from harm, because, this whole game, it could end up being at the end of the game that all siblings or both siblings realize what's going on, and you can unite, and recognize who the parent was, or maybe it was both parents in your case. But it doesn't always work out that way. So, it's devastating what can happen from this kind of abuse. And again, like I said, this can apply to so many situations. It's not just limited to the family, but this is typically how we look at this concept in the familial context. So, did this help you in any way? Do you understand anything a little bit better about what happened to you? Does this ring a bell to you that maybe in your family there wasn't a hard and fast line between this person was always the scapegoat and this person was always the golden child? Was there some blurring of the lines? Did you notice that as well? Or was your family very clear? One scapegoat, one golden child. So I'm sending you all a big hug.